Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are unpacking a truly massive, dramatic shift in the global semiconductor market. We're looking at one of the biggest tech giants on the planet, a sweeping geopolitical strategy, and how a master plan designed to maintain technological dominance, well, it ended up doing something entirely unexpected. We've got a lot of complex global trade dynamics to break down, so let's get right into it. The boomerang effect, how Nvidia lost China.
Okay, let's dive into this. 0%. Not a slight dip, not a gradual decline, absolute zero. Just a short while ago, Nvidia, the undisputed king of AI hardware, held a staggering 95% market share for AI accelerators in China. That market alone made up a massive 20 to 25% of their total data center revenue. But thanks to recent U.S. export policies restricting the sale of high-end AI chips, that absolute dominance just evaporated. Poof, gone. It didn't just shrink, it was completely wiped out. And it happened so incredibly fast that the industry is literally still reeling from the shock.
And the reaction from the very top of the food chain is incredibly telling. Nvidia's own CEO, Jensen Huang, gave a really blunt, completely impartial assessment of the whole situation. He outright stated that the U.S. export policy, quote, has already largely backfired. What he's hitting on here is a classic boomerang effect. Policymakers put these rules in place with a very specific strategic goal in mind, to restrict access to advanced tech, right? But rather than just cutting off the supply, these restrictions swung right back around and smacked the market in a way that fundamentally altered the entire global playing field.
Section 1. The innovation backfire. Intent versus reality.
And this brilliantly illustrates the disconnect. The intended outcome of these policies was totally straightforward: stifle foreign AI progress by cutting off access to the absolute best hardware on the market. The logic kind of makes sense on paper, right? If they don't have Nvidia chips, they can't train the best AI. But the actual reality? This policy rapidly accelerated domestic Chinese innovation. By removing Nvidia as an option, it essentially created this immediate, massive vacuum in the market, and local companies rushed in to fill it.
To put this into a really concrete perspective, we don't even have to look that far. Industry observers are pointing straight at recent developments like DeepSeek AI's inference engines running incredibly smoothly entirely on Huawei hardware. Guys, this isn't some hypothetical future scenario. This is happening right now. Foreign competitors completely bypass the ban by just rapidly developing their own competitive hardware and the networking ecosystems to support it. The Chinese government pushed data centers to use domestic chips, and manufacturers delivered millions of them. We built a wall, and they simply engineered their way right over it.
It really all comes down to that classic proverb, necessity is the mother of invention. Walling off access to American technology didn't somehow stop global development. Instead, it just made the need incredibly pressing. Think about it. If you tell a massive, highly funded tech sector that they can no longer buy a vital, absolutely crucial component, you are essentially forcing them to get better at building it themselves. As observers have noted, by trying to make competitors struggle, the policy inadvertently forced them to become completely self-reliant.
And history actually gives us a fascinating parallel here. Let's rewind to the 1980s. The U.S. faced very similar anxieties regarding Japan's booming tech and auto sectors. That led the administration at the time to implement these strict trade restrictions to try and force domestic production. Well, observers point out that we found out the hard way back then that trying to force domestic production through blanket restrictions often creates way worse outcomes for the U.S. economy than just negotiating solid trade deals. Fast forward to the 2020s, and we're seeing a very, very similar pattern play out with these export restrictions on AI chips.
Section 2. The domestic production penalty. The real price of tariffs. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how we move out of the theoretical macroeconomics and into the tangible, honestly painful reality for local businesses.
Let me give you a real-world example. Industry professionals dealing with these supply chains on the ground are sharing some serious sticker shock. There was a business pricing out steel products, and they found that importing the material from Germany cost them about $9,700. But sourcing that exact same steel domestically, $26,000. That is nearly triple the cost. And keep in mind, that's before even factoring in the margins on the final sale price. U.S. competitors who rely on these materials are quite literally collapsing because they simply cannot absorb these massive price spikes.
And here's another stark example illustrating the exact same problem, just in a different sector. A builder sourcing home clouding originally imported it for around $80,000. And honestly, that was during the height of the 2021 shipping container crisis, which already included tariffs. So they go and get a quote for that exact same product manufactured locally in Texas, $300,000. Wow. And the real kicker here? That $300,000 local product likely still relies on raw materials imported from overseas anyway, which means those astronomical costs are ultimately passed directly down the line to you, the consumer buying the home. So, the crucial point is that broad blanket tariffs create a devastating domino effect. It's really straightforward. We see spiking material prices, which immediately means standard projects become entirely unfeasible. When projects are unfeasible, businesses collapse and local jobs are lost. The romantic, nostalgic idea that we can simply slap tariffs on everything to roll back the clock and instantly revive 1950s-style manufacturing, well, it completely ignores the reality of modern, highly interconnected supply chains. Instead of protecting local businesses, these policies are often just suffocating them with inflated costs.
Section 3, Winning the AI Race. Correcting the course.
So how do we fix this? How do we correct the course? Well, the first step is acknowledging a fundamental logical flaw that critics of the current trade policies point out. If your actual goal is to restore domestic manufacturing, you cannot just tariff anything and everything. By putting a blanket tariff on raw goods, you're placing a massive tax on the exact materials needed to produce things locally in the US. You are effectively making it significantly more expensive to manufacture at home, which, let's be honest, completely defeats the original purpose.
Because of this, observers and tech leaders are suggesting two very specific, structured steps to untangle this massive supply chain mess. Step 1, shift tariffs exclusively to end products. The idea is to protect the final manufactured good, but let domestic builders actually source their raw materials at competitive global prices. Step 2, reduce blanket export restrictions on U.S. chips. We need to allow American companies to compete in these massive global markets so they can actually fund the huge amount of research and development needed to stay on top.
Because at the end of the day, despite all the frustrations over lost market share and crazy supply chain headaches, the ultimate goal shared by tech leaders like Nvidia's Jensen Huang is absolutely clear. As he stated plainly, quote, "We want the United States to win." The entire objective is to maintain global leadership in the AI space. But the current constraints? While they were intended to protect that leadership, they are rapidly creating well-funded, highly motivated competitors overseas while simultaneously jacking up costs right here at home.
Which leaves us with an incredibly vital, lingering question to consider as we watch the next few years unfold. Will policymakers adapt this strategy, actually learning from the massive boomerang effect of these restrictions? Or will we stubbornly maintain course and just watch our own tech giants get completely walled off from participating in and profiting from global innovation? It's a high-stakes race, and the rules of the game are literally shifting beneath our feet. Thank you for joining me for this explainer. I really hope breaking these concepts down helped you grasp the real mechanics operating behind the headlines. Keep asking those big questions and keep learning.